Hey guys, Andy and Spoken Label back in the house on a Sunday. Yeah, hey, it's horrible out there today. Look, it was lovely yesterday, but we've got rain today, so we're over to a wonderful part of the world today. And I was actually this is the second weekend, second Sunday of the trot I've been to this part of the world as well, actually, because I had him speaking last week to a lady called Lisa O'Hare, who's living in Wrexham Way now. So we're back down there again today, and we're seeing another wonderful writer called Evrah Rose. Now, Evrah. First of all, tell us about yourself, where all your creativity came from, and we'll start from there.
So I am a poet and spoken word performer, and I guess a community advocate and activist as well. Essentially, poetry wasn't something I purposely went into. It was a way to express myself as a child. I was going through quite a few difficult things. So around 8 or 9 years old, I just started to write. It was the only thing I could confide in, the only thing I could trust, and it was the only way I could really express myself. And for me, it just felt like a natural evolution to use that as a friend and confidant. I'd always been quite fascinated with words anyway and the manipulation of language, and it just felt right to be able to speak in that manner. So I was never really alone with my thoughts or some traumas I had because I always had a blank pad and pen. And it grew from there into my teens. I've just continued to write to express myself via that manner, and it became quite a therapy for me. And then in my 20s, a friend of mine shared some of my work without my knowing online.
Friends.
It received really good feedback and reception. And then I was invited to an open mic night called Voice Backs in Wrexham. And everything just escalated from there. And within 12 months, I began doing it professionally. So it's a long journey. I've been doing poetry now. I'm not going to mention how many years, but a very long time, most of my life anyway.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I can admit how old I am because I don't care, frankly. But yeah, I've always learned a stunt is never ask a lady her age, right? So I don't want to know. But I started similar to you, really. I started when I was about 10, really. But I won a prize in school on it, and 42 years later, I'm still writing. So yeah. But I think it's sometimes it's that thing, and I think you probably can admit to is when it's a bug that when it bites you, there's no stopping this thing. You know it's going to recover the rest of your life.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is I didn't really realize that what I was doing was anything creative or something that people would be interested in or that would be sought after. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s when I'd moved to Bristol and I met somebody else who was doing something similar and they called it spoken words. And I was like, there's a name for what I do. So yeah, it just once that bug gets you, it's always with you. It doesn't matter what you do. You know, I'm in bed at night at 3 in the morning, my eyes rise open, and I'm like, oh, I must write this down. And before I know, I've written a poem, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I've had no sleep. It's completely under my skin, and I don't know how I'd live without it.
Have you ever and I don't do this nowadays, thankfully, but is I make sure I've got some like a tablet next to the bed nowadays in case this happens. But when I was younger, I used to have a pad next to my bed, and the amount of times I'd wake up in the middle of the night, scribble a great idea down, and not be able to read a word of it in the morning when I woken up.
Oh God, my pad was always underneath my pillow when I was younger, because I generally would journal or write poetry before I slept because it was a way to write down my worries. But yeah, I know what you mean. Sometimes you're like, what have I even written there? And it's gone. The idea's gone forever.
Yeah, it's a good tip for people is yeah, make sure you've got a tablet next to your bed or your phone, right? You can dip onto the word pad in your phone or but my wife Amanda does ever is and when she wakes up during the night, she just gets up and goes down to study and turns the laptop on and starts writing. I
Fair enough.
couldn't do
Fair.
that to be honest with you, I'm too groggy, so but yeah. Now, obviously, I know you've got some quite a wide range of inspire influences here as well. So there's one of them I hadn't heard of before as well. But I know, obviously, I know Tupac Shakur, and obviously I've seen Kae Tempest live as well. But also, like you mentioned, Stacey-Ann Chin as well. So tell us about these then for the next time.
So Stacey, I stumbled across her on YouTube. You're going back years and years ago now, at least a decade ago, decade and a half. And I just found her delivery so humorous, so poignant. She talks about kind of the women's struggle in the Caribbean, for instance, and her first period and sexual assaults and things like that. But the way she tells it, she instantly draws you in. So I've loved her ever since. She's less active in the poetry world now, and more so in the activism, which was always a theme of hers anyway. But I recommend people check out her book, The Other Side of Paradise. Absolutely brilliant. And if you can, get on YouTube and watch some of her videos. She's fantastic. And Tupac, he he inspired me a lot as a child because he spoke about his story and the
Mm,
way he delivered it and played with words and rhymes, similar to Eminem. I was just so fixated on what they had to say. But the fact that they used music and, Eminem's a classic of that, the way he can bend a word and syllable to match something that's completely unrelated, that shouldn't rhyme. So I was always fascinated with their life stories and felt that that was something I connected to because when I wrote, I was writing about my life. So, essentially my first pieces were more rap orientated as a result. So I was writing raps and kind of doing it in their style, I guess, but writing my own words. And that's how my skill developed. So, I've got a lot to thank them for. And Kae Tempest, just fantastic poet,
unbelievable.
musician. I'm
Absolutely
still yet to see
unbelievable.
them live, but I hope I get there one day.
Yeah, unbelievable, Kate. Oh, good grief. I've never seen anything like that, John. It's rare if you see someone like Kay. Like the way they had their audience in the palm of the hands was extraordinary. You don't see that very often. That's why straight away with it. I agree with you completely.
As
Now,
soon as Kate picks up a mic, she demands an audience.
yeah,
Just the way that
once in a
Kate delivers
generation.
their words, it takes you back. You're just instantly drawn into whatever they say. Just an incredible performer.
Yeah, there's once in a generation base, I think, straight away with that one. And I agree with everything you say completely with that there. So I want to learn next then, obviously, because you've had a few quite interesting commissions knocking around over the last few years as well. And we could spend half an hour on some of these alone, but we'll just touch on these, I think, John. Yeah. I know you did a big commission for BBC Sport and BBC Wales to mark the Welsh Rugby Six Nations Grand Slam of 2019. Tell us about
Yeah.
that one next. That sounds like a heck of a story, that.
Oh, it was amazing. So I got a message from somebody at BBC Sport, and they were like, "Look, so we didn't actually know if Wales was going to win this Grand Slam at this point. So they were like, look, we want you to write a poem as if we've won it, but not knowing that we've won it. We may not win it yet. So what we'll do is you've got to write it, learn it, and film it within the space of a week and a half. And then if they win, it goes out on TV, basically. And thankfully, they did win, which is great. So we filmed it in my local park here called Bellevue Park. And yeah, just did loads of walking shots, beautiful daffodils as you get this time of year. And then, of course, we won the Grand Slam and it featured on BBC Two on their programme there, recapping the rugby. And it just, to see myself on telly was just, and to be able to go, shh, Welsh are coming. That for me was just like, oh, it was the best day ever. Like, just, I was like, I'm on telly. So yeah, incredible commission.
Okay.
Really grateful to BBC Sport and BBC Two for that.
Oh yeah, you can't beat stuff like that one straight away. And I know you did another one, didn't you, for a poem that was dedicated to the FA Wales reaching the FIFA World Cup of 2022.
Yeah.
So what happened with that one then?
So again, the BBC contacted me because obviously it was a World Cup in Qatar, and they wanted me to write something that would, I guess, inspire the fans and the team. So that's where that poem came from. And again, it was filmed locally at the Queensway Sports and Social Club because I like using local areas to kind of film my poetry. And that was really cool. That was put out for the World Cup and that travelled around the internet. And it was just a very rousing poem. I specifically wanted it to big classical orchestral music, that kind of enthusiastic powerhouse. When it comes to Wales, we are the country of the poets, the country of the bards. So, it was very fitting to write a poem dedicated to the Welsh football team from the World Cup. It was amazing.
Fantastic. And also, like, there's a few other commissions people read up you've done as well. But for people that are curious on commissions, then how do you find you approach your work changes when you say you get a good commission coming?
My approach to everything is always the same. So I always start with a conclusion. It doesn't matter whether it's a commission or something I'm just writing for myself or a film. I always start with my conclusion. What is it I want to say? You can't possibly know where you're going unless you know your path to your journey. And then I work my way backwards. Some
Hmm.
days it can take me a couple of hours to write a commission. It just flows out of me. Other times, for instance, when I wrote a commission last year for New Symphonia, Um, I just stepped up to the mic and just did it. Same as the invisible me. I just stepped up to the mic and did it. So people don't realize that some
Wow.
of the stuff I do are freestyle and I don't edit them. I literally don't edit them. So it just very much depends on the mood, how it engages me, and I guess what the commission wants from me. So, for instance, when it's been charities in the past, they want certain kind of buzzwords in there, or maybe some numbers or statistics. So I find clever ways to put them in there. So my writing style always stays the same. It's conclusion first. What am I trying to say? And quite often, the last line of the poem I'm writing anyway immediately pops into my head. That's where I'm going with that. I work backwards.
Yeah, it's a,
Like it's always served me really well, even with essay writing and schoolwork. It's always served me really well to work backwards.
yeah, I think I get your point. I agree with that. I think I'm usually the same where I easily end up upset, but I sometimes just drop myself straight in the middle and think to myself,
Yeah,
how the heck do I get to this
yeah.
point and what comes next? So yeah, yeah. I think it's the way our brains work sometimes, isn't it? Sometimes I think being
I think
creative
as well
sometimes,
is
yeah.
starting something. Sometimes starting something is the most daunting thing. So people are like, what is the first word I'm going to write? But just write your conclusion. What is it you want to say? I want to say this, work backwards. It's less daunting. It's and then you've got the glory then afterwards of being like, okay, I can move that around. You could have your start in the middle and the end and move it all the way around. So that's the fascinating thing about writing poetry is that it doesn't matter where you start, essentially, you'll come to a whole body of work that you can manipulate into whatever story that you want, in whatever shape or sound you want. It's just an incredible art form. I love it.
Yeah, me too as well. I think it does it for. It's definitely I get what you're on about there. Now, I know you've got a single out soon, haven't you? Which I think it's gonna be out after this podcast. Well, this podcast goes out afterwards, actually. So,
Yeah.
Lemonade. Now, I've seen the video on this, and I really enjoyed this. So, tell us about Lemonade next.
Lemonade is a bilingual anthem for the lasses. It drops on the 7th of March, a day before International Women's Day. And it was a collaboration that was never meant to be, but was meant to be. And essentially, I was in the studio one afternoon and I got a call from a local studio, Rock 2, and they asked if I would be a part of this course where they Focus Wales and Rock 2 team up and they get artists and producers, team them up for 3 days, and they develop a body of work, maybe a single, learn more about production. And somebody had dropped out. So they'd called me and they were like, it's last minute, but can you come in? And I ummed and ahed about it. And I was like, okay, fine. On the day I was supposed to go there, I didn't feel well. I was like, do I need to go? And I just went and I met Edith there. And it was just instant. We clicked instantly. And we were working on one track on the first day. And I'd gone home and I just wasn't feeling it. I was like, no, there are times where you're just not feeling a piece of work.
Yeah.
So I developed this idea the evening after that. And then went in the next morning. I was like, I've had this idea. I've made it on Bandcamp. And it just blossomed into Lemonade. It just became something quite amazing. It's grungy, it's rocky, it's rappy. It's just fantastic.
Yeah,
I,
it's
I,
fantastic.
I implore you all to listen to it. Like,
I
listen to
do.
that single.
I do as well. Well worth your time, honestly. And I was hearing it, I thought, oh wow. So I spotted it the other day, and I think it was TikTok actually. So yeah, brilliant it was. No, I agree with you completely everything you say there with that. Now, obviously, back to what I'm talking about your live performances before. You also told us about you do obviously a bit of both and pre-prepared and impro. But I know you've been headlining a night at a friend of mine's headlined recently. In fact, two people I know actually have headlined recently. Speak Your Mind. So, how did that
Yeah.
experience go then?
Oh, so good. It was one of the most welcoming and wholesome poetry communities I've ever performed at. And I've performed at a lot of places up and down the country, but there was something so comforting about it. There was a lot of people there who, like me, are on the spectrum or have some element of neurodivergency as well. So I just felt completely at home when I was doing my, little ticks or stims and things like that. It was just fine. It was natural. It fell into place. And it was just great. They were so receptive. There was a bunch of really incredible poets there who in the open mic. I was just blown away by the talent and the community there. So it's easily one of my favourite gigs I've ever done.
He looks at it as well. Like, it's a bit far away for me to get down to any sort of regular basis, me, but it's certainly one I would love to go down to myself in the future. Said like the amount of people I know that read there regular and they're all praised like you have, yeah, a fair play straight away with that.
Yeah,
Now,
it's brilliant.
I want to ask you next then, obviously. So I should have done this as the commission side thing before, and I've just realised I missed one bit off. You've done some work at BBC Six, haven't you? It was all about hometown. So can you tell us about that next?
Yeah, so Hugh Stevens came up to Wrexham, and he was doing. He comes up to Wrexham every now and then and does a show
Hmm.
from there. Has things dedicated it, and they asked me if I would do a poem live on the radio for them. So I did Hometown, which is a poem I written and dedicated to Wrexham, because obviously it's one of those places that it doesn't matter where I go or what I do, it always pulls me back. And I've been a strong advocate for Wrexham for many years, and I've always used my platform to kind of highlight the brilliance of the town, get people to feel more confident and engaged in the town. Before the club owners, I want to mention actually, because Wrexham's not niche to me; it's for life. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, did you do that because of the owners?" And it's like, "Well, no, I was doing it before people take over because I love my town." Like so many of us here, who would often people about, oh, you're jumping on the bandwagon, to a lot of people in this community, and they're like, no. Do you know what I mean? So I jumped at the chance because I absolutely adore Hugh Stevens. I think he's brilliant. I used to listen to him back in the day on Radio 1. So to be on his show was just, it was amazing, and it was played across BBC Six. So, I can't complain about that. It was a proud moment for me.
Oh yeah, no, agree completely. It's something that anybody would be proud of that straight away of it. Now, obviously, on a different note, I know you back in May 23, you founded Red Roach Radio. I said radio then, record. Sorry, I know I didn't put you down to DJ then instead of forming a record company. Sorry. Yeah, I think we're talking about DJs. Now, obviously, like you formed it, confirmed it, Red Roach Records, a
Yeah,
community-focused record label and music distributor, prioritizing the growth and careers of Wrexham-based talent. Now, that kind of flows on nice what you said about
yeah.
your love of Wrexham there. So, what made you want to do this then?
It'd been an ambition for mine for a number of years. I never found the right person to kind of set it up with or the right time to do it. And so by the time May 2023 come around, it was already 12 months in the planning anyway, getting the logos done, kind of setting up what I want to do, getting distributors set up. And it was just essentially because I see a lot of, I guess, talent from the south of Wales and Cardiff and beyond really celebrated in the media, plays on the radio and things like that. And I know there's an abundance of talent in Wrexham and, in the north of Wales in general. And I just felt like we needed something like that. There wasn't really an official label around here or anybody dedicated to that. We have other organisations who highlight hip hop scene or highlight some of the indie music and grassroots music, but nobody was dedicated to supporting the
Hmm.
artist, advocating for them, developing their skills, and distributing their music for them. And hopefully, when they leave the label, they've got a load of skills and a body of work that they can take into the media and kind of beyond where we are. So that's why I wanted to set it up. But again, it was a seed that grew in me. I mean, where are we now? We're 2025. So, you're looking back 2019, 2018, when I first was like, yeah, I really want to set up a label, but I just wasn't ready. And of course, I'd been poorly in that time. And then I started working with somebody, and it just felt right at that point to do it. So 12 months in the planning, and then May 2023, Red Roach was born.
I get it completely right. Is when I first set up Spoken Label now, I've not told you this before. I originally started it at the beginning of 2016, would you believe? So next year's our 10th-year anniversary. And it took me, yeah, you're dead right, it took me over a year to be ready for it. And I think sometimes you need to do any sort of big project like that, you need to give yourself that space to plan sometimes, I think, definitely. So, no, I understand you completely. Because if you jump straight in, you're not doing the artists any favours or yourself any favours. So, I agree with you completely with that. Now, next thing I'm interested in learning about is obviously you've been at a nomination, haven't you, of the International Video Poetry Festival for Invisible Me.
Yeah, so it's actually been selected to feature in the festival. So it's not nominated, it's selected.
Oh, oh
So
well,
it will
outdated
feature
information. Sorry.
it will feature in the festival in Athens in April. And that festival is 11th to 12th of April. And it's the largest international video poetry festival in the world. So I couldn't quite believe it when I got an email to say that the film had been selected. So I'm currently working on plans to go over there in Athens, to network, collaborate with some artists, and do a talk about my film at the festival as well. So it's just something I'm incredibly proud of. When I created Invisible Me, it came from a very dark place, a very lost place, and a place where I felt completely hopeless, but also wanted to raise awareness for a lot of people in my similar situation. So for it to be getting the recognition that it's currently getting is just incredible. It's currently being toured across Wales in David and Von der Garner's exhibit Pantomime Behind the Mask. It's been at Simon in Oriel Khan in Carnarvon being showcased there, and it's just been selected by Goela Firth to appear in their festival in the coming weeks as well. So,
Wow.
it's getting recognition I never imagined for it. The film to me is a year old now. That's when it was created initially, but to everybody else, it's quite new. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing where this film goes and what 2025 brings for it. And of course, working on other films currently, which will be filmed throughout the year as well.
Brilliant. You tell us more about that in what's next at the end in a few moments' time. But obviously, before we get on to that, I want to talk. I know you've done two books to date, and tell us about the first one. Oh, look, Unspoken, which came out in 2019.
Yeah. So this is Unspoken. Cheeky advertisements. I don't know if you can see that.
Uh, Pull it back a little bit. People can see it then. Oh, there we are. Got it. Got
There
it.
it
There you
is.
are. Got it. Rock and roll.
So that is Unspoken. So Unspoken comes from, I guess, a lot of trauma. It's the things that many of us go through, really awful traumatic events, but we're not allowed to really speak openly about them. And when we do, we feel shame or guilt or embarrassment or fear. So it's about all the things that many of us go through, but unfortunately isn't spoken about in society. The levels of discrimination or sexual abuse that's prevalent. They're still taboo subjects, regardless of what people say they are taboo. You can't just readily bring those up in conversations. People are instantly uncomfortable, they don't want to hear about it. But these are people's lived experiences, they're my lived experiences. So it's about getting those off my chest. And I guess it came from a point of defiance as well. I will no longer remain silent on the people that did this to me and the things that go on in society that people are just accepting because they can't speak openly about it. So that was Unspoken. It was my debut collection through Verve Poetry Press, and easily the proudest I'd ever been. Just you'll know it, like when you get your book in your
Yeah.
hand, your
Oh
very
yeah.
first book, and you think, I did that. And I remember saying as a child, I'm going to write a book. And I didn't know what that book would be or how that would be or when that would be, but I did it. So it was a huge achievement and a body of work I'm very proud of.
Yeah, saw something as well. I think the very first book you do, you, I know when I did mine, I was sat there looking at it for weeks afterwards, unable to believe what I'd actually done. It's just like it's a shock to your system, I think, really, because I think and same goes when you bring albums out or singles, everything you bring out, the first one or two, you're sat there thinking, God,
Yeah.
what I've done to get to this stage. So
Yeah. It,
I
it,
agree
it
with,
can't beat that feeling. It's the same whenever I hear a song of mine on the radio, like it's still like the very first time. Like I never tired of hearing my music on the radio. I never tired of holding my books in my hand. Like I did this, like I achieved this, like unbeatable feelings.
oh yeah, no, completely. I agree completely with that. Now, obviously, 4 years later, 23, your second book's followed through Defined Hope, which what I look I've seen of both of them, I think, yeah, I go, look at that. Look at that again. Time to perfection, and people might think that. But yeah, now, obviously, this is a journey of 4 years later. So tell us a little bit about your second book then and where this came from.
So Define Hope is very much a journey of what I'd gone through since the release of the first book. It was kind of hits of domestic violence, it was my health problems, it was my anger at the world. It was like I was going through such storms in life. And I just didn't know how I was getting through them. I was, but I just didn't know. And I just realized it's hope. The one thing that's driven me this entire time for the stuff I've been through is hope. And I just realized that so many of us in society, it doesn't matter what we go through, how we're beat down, what we see. The one thing that connects each and every one of us is hope. Like it runs through all of us like water. Like you cannot burn it out. Even in the darkest of moments where you feel, oh, I don't think it can get much worse than this, but you still hope for a better day. And
Yeah.
that's the power of it. So it's kind of a mix of my journey, a bit more intimate look into my life, who I am as a poet, and kind of some of those experiences, as well as the chip on my shoulder I have with society and people's ableism, I guess, in general as well.
Now, great. Now, did you find that obviously when you look back at both of these two books now, can you see how you've changed as a writer? Because I've done a few poetry books, and each one I do often is a reaction against the first book, or the previous book, I should say. Sorry, wrong word there.
Yes, I can clearly see not only the change in me, but the growth in me, but also the first book was heavily influenced by somebody that was in my life at the time. So there are poems I would have put in unspoken that never made it because of that person. They're no longer in my life, which is great, and you'll find out why in Define Hope that they're no longer in
Yeah,
my life. So, it was influenced by that. And I do feel regret at some of that at some points. That book should have been a little bit different, but I'm still proud of it. But you can clearly see the growth in my writing, my confidence, me as an individual. I'm speaking about a lot of things that are unspoken in society and unspoken, but if anything, I'm more brave in Define Hope because I'm looking inward and I'm not masking what I feel and kind of the realities of depression, domestic violence, chronic health, and the anger you feel towards people around you. So you can definitely see it. I don't think Define Hope was necessarily a reaction to Unspoken, but it does lead on nicely. It's kind of like these are the things in this book I've always wanted to say, but been too scared to say. This is how I survive those things, and this is
yeah.
how we all survive. And I'm currently working on my third book, so I'm sure we'll see even more growth with that one.
That's what I was going to ask you next, because I'm going to ask you next question. What plans do you have next then? Because I know you've obviously told us about Lemonade's obviously going to be out when this podcast comes out. Obviously, the third book, I know from talking to people, is in development and also videos as well. So what I find amazing ever about you is, and I'm the same in this in a different way, is that I think when you start off as just a poet like I did, and I know you did the same, are you amazed now? You look at yourself and see how many different directions your creativity has led you off in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of like the poetry, I guess I was definitely always a poet, but I was also a rapper and a musician. So I used to write
Hmm.
songs and things on my guitar. So it's something I did all the time, every day. Even when I wasn't doing poetry professionally, I was just so engaged in music. But actually, leading off from the poetry, I've been able to work with young people and inspire them, gig around the country, manage the first football festival in the world, perform at the Kairas, the racecourse stadium, and be the first woman to read out the team sheet. It just, all these amazing things happen. I run a record label now, but I couldn't have possibly done that without my platform. I speak at notable events and work with incredible charities. And I'm able to kind of support people in my community off the back of it. And that is the biggest thing I always wanted to come from whatever I did. I always promised if I ever had a platform where people would actually listen to me, I would ensure that people in my community were supported and their voices heard. And that's what I've spent my time doing. So now I'm a director of a children's charity. I'm a trustee of an orchestral charity. So it's just, yeah, I can't quite fathom how far I've come in my journey. Um, but it changes all the time and it always gets really interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think you do. It's when you get so involved in your creativity. I know what I was like because I've been pretty active for about 15 years now. The person from me from 20 years ago would have been horrified the way I am now. And yours is probably like that when you're younger as well. You're thinking like it shows you really one thing always leads to another. And that's why you look back at
Yeah.
your younger self, and looks at yourself. I don't even recognize myself sometimes when I'm younger.
Yeah, I definitely I'm completely different from my younger self. I was in a lot of turmoil when I was younger. I had post-traumatic stress disorder. I was in trouble all the time. But actually what I've done is become the person I needed when I was growing up. That
Yeah.
kind of inspiration and guide and kind of support. This is exactly who I needed when I was going through all those things. And to be honest, in terms of kind of, I wouldn't be embarrassed by myself, my younger me would be like, oh, wow. Because although I had this persona of acting really hard and like, I had this shell around me because I was scared of being vulnerable and letting people in and things. And obviously, the mental health troubles I had, it's like I was always really into classical music, orchestral, poetry and things like that, but it was silence. Like I just kept it to myself. I was embarrassed to show my friends. But actually, my younger self would be so proud of who I've become. And I know I would be somebody I would play on streamers and watch. And that's who I
Right.
wanted to be, the person that I needed.
Yeah, I agree. Get you completely, and I do agree with you in that. Now, you said before, obviously, I know you let Lemonade's out now. Is there any more plans for any more tracks at the moment to follow from that at the moment?
Yes, so I'm working on my second album. That will drop sometime in the spring when I decide it's ready, basically.
Fair enough,
There's no
fair enough.
pressure there. And the luxury of having my own label and things like that, I don't have anybody telling me what to do anymore, as I did with my previous label. So I drop when I want to. So that'll be out in the spring at some point. It's called Link in Bio, and
Oh, I like that.
it's a very, very
Sorry.
well, yeah, I thought I'd play with it. It's the fact that everybody on the Instagram posts like link in bio, but actually, like all of the links in my life and my bio are like where I started. So it's an intimate look at kind of my early life and kind of the experiences that I had through life and why I am the person I am, why I do what I do, why I speak the way I do, and why I'm so passionate now. So it's I mean, I was back in studio yesterday and just it's a big album. It's big. It's a lot of harmonies, big voice, instrumentals. Just it will be the best musical body of work I've ever put out.
No,
I can
no,
guarantee that.
I don't doubt you either on that one. That I can well believe. So, now, obviously, that's covered all my questions today, really. So, obviously, but two quick questions to wrap up on part one is where can people find you on social media if they want to try and research you or get in
If they want
contact?
to find me on social media, Instagram at Evrah Rose. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but if you go onto Blue Sky, same handle, Evrah Rose. Facebook.com/ Evrah Rose. Like the name is always the same, even with TikTok. So you can find me on all social medias. Simple search for Evrah Rose.
Good to me then. Now, obviously, your books then, where can people get hold of your books?
Pretty much most places. So you can either buy them on my Bandcamp or you can go to Verve Poetry Press, which is the press that I'm signed to, who publish my works, or you can go online, places like Waterstones, WH Smith. Most places you can get them in boutique feminist bookshops. So all you have to do, quick search Evrah Rose Unspoken or Evrah Rose The Fine Hope on the internet, and it will come up with my books, and you can just choose where you want to buy them from. Prefer it if you buy them from me because I'm the artist, the money goes direct to me. So if you want to get them from me, Bandcamp.
Which is your Bandcamp page? And obviously, I was going to ask you about that next, actually.
So it's everrose1 dot bandcamp.com. Really
Perfect.
easy. But even
Red,
if you go into Bandcamp, you search Evrah Rose.
perfect. Your record label, Red Roach Raid Records, then is that on Bandcamp as well, is it?
Yes. So our artists are all on our Red Rose Bandcamp. So you can click on our artists such as JP, Blurs, Runic, OD, for instance, and get a feel for their music. You can also buy their music there. So yeah, you can find us on Bandcamp.
Perfect. Last bit is obviously your videos we've been talking about as well. Where are people best if you want to have a look, watch these then?
So you can go to YouTube to watch my films. Again, it's at Evrah Rose. Facebook, I have a number of films on there. And of course, my website, everahrosepoetry.co.uk.
Perfect. Well, that covers all my questions there now. So we're going to take a quick break here, folks. And we'll come back. Evra's going to do a couple of pieces for us. So I've enjoyed it today. Thank you, Evra. It's been an absolute pleasure this today.
Diolch
Right.
yn fawr iawn.
We will see you all in two shakes of the dice.